Chapter 9. Mick Jagger, Pete Townshend, and the Naked Beetle. I met Mick Jagger when I was 22 and he was 25. It was in July 1968. Jane and I were on our honeymoon, poolside with the Steve Miller Band at a hotel in Hollywood. Mick was in town remixing Beggar's Banquet with Glyn Johns, who was also producing Steve's record. Mick had a soft handshake and a soft voice. He was wearing a dress shirt with pressed trousers, definitely not a rock star outfit, but a rock star he surely was. He made me feel comfortable right away. I sat at the mixing board between Glyn and Mick, and suddenly, out of this supersonic sound system, came Street Fighting Man. They played it again and again as they mixed it, stunning on first listen, absolutely incredible as the song became more familiar. They also worked on No Expectations. Then Mick stopped the mixing and told me he had finished one more and would I like to hear it. It was Sympathy for the Devil. The final take had been done the day after Bobby Kennedy had been gunned down, and Mick added the lines, "I shouted out who killed the Kennedys. After all, it was you and me." Mick took me in his red Cadillac convertible to the house he had rented in Beverly Hills. A couple of cars with groupies tailed us for a while. He had the test pressing of a new record to play for me that had knocked him out. It was the first time I heard music from Big Pink. We spent a long time talking about music and so many other things. It was a great start to a friendship. Booker T and the MGs played the Fillmore. I found them packed into their dressing room, keeping their distance from the druggy and rock and roll chaos backstage. They were four properly dressed Southern boys with polite manners. Steve Cropper, a consummate and widely respected guitar player, bassist Duck Dunn, the kid in the group, band leader and organist Booker T. Jones, and Al Jackson, the human drum machine. I invited them to my loft the next day to do a turntable talk about some of their landmark records, Soul Man, Knock on Wood, Hold On, I'm Coming, Respect, and Dock of the Bay. For 2 hours, they told the stories of how the songs were conceived and written, what the creative process was like, and how much fun and accidental it all was. Hold On, I'm Coming, for example, was what Sam Moore had yelled while sitting on the can when Steve Cropper was trying to get him back into the studio. It was one of my favorite interviews about making music. Pete Townshend was my next big interview. This time, The Who was in town headlining for hippies at the Fillmore, and Pete performed in a t-shirt and white pants instead of setting off smoke bombs for teenagers in a glitter outfit. He suggested we meet at my house after his last show. He arrived at 2 a.m. He was not ready to wind down. Pete loves to talk, he loves to think, and he loves to ramble about his many strong opinions, which often contradict one another. We talked about his guitar smashing, when he started it and why, how he felt while doing it and after it was over. We mostly talked about the history of The Who and their future. Pete said, "We've been talking about doing an opera called Deaf, Dumb, and Blind Boy, and the hero is played by The Who. We really want to create the feeling that when you listen to the music, you can actually become aware of the boy. He sees things basically as vibrations, which we translate as music. The boy elevates and finds something incredible and overwhelming." Pete told me later that this was the first time he had articulated the concept for Tommy. I took him to the airport the next day. He asked if I had spiked his orange juice with acid the night before. I hadn't. It was pure Pete. The interview was so long, we ran it in 2 parts. The first cover was an artsy photo I took of Pete windmilling on stage. The cover of the issue with part 2 was a pistol-packing Mickey Mouse in boots, lighting a cigar, perhaps a large joint, and getting ready to shoot. It was a cartoon by Rick Griffin, who had drawn the Rolling Stone logo. We were covering the arts that were growing in the same cultural soil as the rock scene, the poster artists, the underground comics crew, and the world of people who put on the light shows at dance concerts. We also had a review of John Lennon's first-ever solo art exhibition by Jonathan Cott, who had gotten a fellowship to study in London just as Rolling Stone was getting started, and I asked him to be our correspondent. $25 for articles, $50 for interviews. That issue debuted Random Notes, our gossip column, modeled on the column of the same name that had run in the student newspaper I had started in high school. We had been running a silly gossip column by the pseudonymous John J. Rock, but I was up to my neck and had to retire that dude. In the same issue, Janis Joplin announced she was leaving Big Brother. John Landau had written earlier that she was at a whole other level than her band, and Ralph had predicted that showbiz was going to swoop in and take Janis. It did. We put Mick on the cover again with an interview Jonathan Cott had conducted at Mick's office in London. Mick never took interviews seriously. They were a trivial genre of music journalism then, and the idea bored him, but he had never been interviewed by Jonathan, who had developed a way of getting what he wanted from a subject by profusely apologizing in advance for interrupting, asking too much, and even doing the interview to begin with, by which point the subject was desperate to help Jonathan and answer any question he asked. Once that dynamic was established, no matter who the subject, Jonathan would pull out some arcane reference, quote, or bit of knowledge that clearly indicated that he knew the interviewee's area of expertise stone cold and had his own provocative insights on the subject at hand. This was Jonathan's modus operandi for all the years to come. One had no choice but to surrender, and that included Mick. Ours was probably the first serious interview he had ever done. He gave us the artwork for Beggar's Banquet, which had been banned, and we ran it as a center spread. It was a photo of a bathroom stall, with the album credits written in graffiti on the walls.